SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Okay, the President of the United States is speaking right at this moment at a state ceremony. He has got the King of England there with him today, and they're up on a stage at the White House, and he's talking. The royal visit is how they are describing it. I didn't know that the band that travels around with the king there, the royalty, they're dressed in Revolutionary War redcoat uniforms. I didn't know that, honestly. So they are exchanging pleasantries. And I don't know if you saw the report of the lip readers this morning when the king landed and they were on the red carpet there walking into the White House. And the lip readers were trying to figure out, of course, what the president and the king were saying. And it was reported that the president's first words were like, "What about the shooting?" or something to that effect. And the king said, "Let's don't stay out here very long." I'm laughing at it because it's sick that we've gotten to this point, and that's the first exchange that these two world leaders would have. But really is a sad deal. So what's the latest on this alleged assassin? He's been indicted at this point, I believe?
Yeah, he's been charged.
Charged, okay. So we'll see what happens next. The rhetoric out of control. Okay, so what's up with Jimmy Kimmel?
He had his mock White House Correspondents' Dinner prior to the official White House Correspondents' Dinner with the attempted assassination. And one of the jokes he made was, he said, "Melania Trump's here. She's got I think he said she's got the glow of an expectant widow." And then kept right on with his jokes. And then the assassination attempt puts that joke in a bit of a dark color. So Melania Trump, the First Lady, put out a statement yesterday calling for ABC to fire him for his violent rhetoric. Trump backed her up with a statement, and everybody seems to be on the left circling the wagons for him.
Unbelievable. Good for her. Good. She's not a person who inserts herself too frequently in the affairs of the country. And I think this one went too far. And she said enough. In fact, I believe that is what she said. Enough is enough, right? And she is calling for the termination by the ABC network of Jimmy Kimmel. It's despicable. What is wrong with these people? I don't get it.
Well, since 2016, the left has done their level best to dehumanize Trump in each and every way possible so that they can continue to spout their nonsense in the hopes that one of their crazies will enact their immoral goals. I guess so. And I saw another poll this morning.
that actually it was a report on a poll that was taken in last November. 33% of young Americans believe that political violence is justified to get their way. 33%, a third. Who's raising these people that they think like that? I don't get it. And now there's data, you've probably seen this, that indicate that the threats to lawmakers of some sort of violence on the rise, despite the calls to end the political violence. The recent Pew Research study found that 85% of Americans believe political violence is on the rise. Roughly half of Americans blame the right, and the other half blame the left. Oh, that's shocking. Texas Congressman Michael McCall sat in the ballroom after the incident Saturday night and said, this is where politics is going. You want your way? Oh, just kill the person that's standing in the way of that. That literally is what they think. That's where we are as a society. That's a sad statement on our country that certainly needs to change. And then I was looking at some reports, no surprise, from America's college campuses, which is, I believe, where a lot of this political hate is fomented. And it's no surprise that there's just an unbelievable amount of liberal scholars on our campuses that are advocating for this sort of nonsense and pushing this kind of rhetoric that clearly does not value human life. Turns out that Americans, well, why is it smart people? Americans with graduate degrees are twice as likely to support political violence, according to a survey, with graduate degrees. Of course, you can't just assume they're smarter.
They spend so much time in academia.
Yeah,
and
I think it
is full of bleeding heart blowhards and activists and communists and socialists and people that think America should burn.
I totally do. So the University of Arizona, their honors college, they're still pushing DEI, anti-capitalist, and anti-Israel agendas. Just looking at some of the reports across the college campuses, and this is important to me because this is where it all starts. These are young, impressionable, malleable minds that are easily influenced. There is a University of Michigan. They're offering an equitable makeup class taught by a drag performer. Teachers' unions in this country spent $1 billion on leftist causes over the last decade. But they gaslight us with this nonsense that teachers' unions don't lean heavily to the left. They gave them $1 billion over the last decade. Really incredible. The University of Kansas, this was an interesting story that I caught, just talking more about what's happening around the college landscape of America. There was a guy holding an N-word sign at Kansas State University. He's a black person, not in blackface as claimed. So the august journalist there at the university saw this and did a report, a liberal columnist, and they basically said, "Oh yeah, it was a white person out in blackface," but it turns out it wasn't. Unbelievable. But that's another jackpot situation for them, right? When they encounter that, they're all over it. Man, oh man.
Is it a jackpot if your finger's on the scale? Because, the SPLC was donating money to hate groups that they were labeling as hate groups, but giving them money to stir up crap.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Caroline Leavitt of course, the White House press secretary said the entire Democrat Party has made their pitch to voters across the country that Donald Trump poses an existential threat to democracy, that he is a fascist, and that they compare him to Hitler. Well, of course, then
they've compared every single Republican presidential nominee since Eisenhower to Hitler.
Well, that's true.
The only reason they couldn't compare Eisenhower because Eisenhower fought Hitler.
That's absolutely true. So,
and violence from the left is nothing new.
Right.
Do we forget about the bombs the hippies made?
No. Going back to the 70s, right? 60s and 70s, you had crazy stuff like that going on. In fact...
Or what about the whack job anti-nuclear dude that smacked the glass sculpture that Reagan had been given in 92?
True. Yeah.
Tried to take over the podium.
I absolutely forgot about that. We got law professor Christopher Green on with us at 10:35. Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association at 12:05. We are in the Element Wealth studio.
Hello,
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
We're rolling.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
what? This is so
Awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Just telling Rhino that had the pleasure of attending the Hancock County, Mississippi Republican Executive Committee annual fundraiser. I believe it's their third annual. Had a dinner there at the Hollywood Casino. Well done, by the way. Went down with some friends, and Governor Haley Barbour, Senator Trent Lott, keynote speakers. They were celebrating Evelyn McPhail. And the McPhail family was on board. She, a huge figure in the Republican Party in the state of Mississippi in her day. And good friends, good folks, good food. Really enjoyed being down there yesterday, Hancock County, Mississippi. You know, the landscape through Pearl River County, Rhino, in that area is really beautiful. It's like you don't think you're that far from the coast. It's little opposite, I guess, of the coastal landscape. Beautiful open spaces and gentle rolling hills through there and so forth. But enjoyed that and appreciate all the great hospitality from the Hancock County Republican Executive Committee. And the casino looked like it was doing pretty well, too, which is good stuff going on there. So, you know, we sort of thought we were over all this DEI garbage. And it turns out that there are a number of law schools. What is it with law schools? They seem to be like ground zero.
Well, that's peak academia.
Oh, okay. They're really
unlike
smart.
Medical school, where you got to spend all that time in extra school,
Okay.
actually learning to do things that are practically useful. Law school is just sitting around BSing about heady topics.
That is true. So, of the nearly 200 law schools accredited by the American Bar Association, 62 appear to still require students to complete DEI-related coursework or programming in order to graduate. Programming, of course, the operative word there. Got to send them out like little DEI robots, huh? That's according to a report just published on April 16th. 72 law schools appear to maintain DEI offices or rebranded versions of them. Yeah, it didn't go away, did it? Didn't go away. It's just been kind of rebranded. Sarah Parshall-Perry, senior legal fellow at Defending Education, said law school is a time for real intellectual development, not infusing race-based programs into these legal paradigms. Yes, well said. They are instead ensuring race-based perspectives in legal education at the cost of excellence in legal education. That's what she told reporters. The ABA has a near monopoly on law school accreditation. That may be the core problem right there. Some more news from the college world. Taxpayer-funded Truman Scholars overwhelmingly are liberal, and that's for a 12th year in a row. In fact, they've pretty much said conservative-leaning people, no need to apply. You ain't getting in. 5 scholars of the 39 have publicly advocated for conservative viewpoints, have interned for Republican politicians, or I guess they could be identified as leaning to the right. But only 5 of the 39. That's really comforting. So there's a report from the federal government. We've talked about the massive amount, of course, of waste, fraud, misspending at the federal level. And there's a new report that says $186 billion in federal payment errors. Just errors. $186 billion. And they now believe this is the Government Accountability Office says, yeah, we think this is undercounting the total amount. This is enough, by the way, to cover, look that up, the SNAP program. The waste, the misspending, improper payments is sufficient in value to fund the food stamps program. That's how sick it is. Now, that serves 41.7 million participants in this country. Unbelievable. So we're going in the wrong direction here. Federal agencies are just really bad at protecting taxpayer money because there are no consequences for it. There's no accountability, no consequences. Overpayments?
Unless it can't be ignored, like the Quality Leering Center in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Because you got Operation Gothic Serpent 2.0 going on there.
I saw that.
It's not really Operation Gothic Serpent. That's a joke. I know somebody's going to get their panties in a twist over that.
Gothic Serpent. I love it.
That was the name of the mission for Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, I remember.
And Minneapolis is basically Little Mogadishu now. So.
It sure is. So overpayments are just the amount that exceeded the true amount owed under these programs, $153 billion. That's 82% of the total mispayment system here. The remainder included unknown payment of $14.3 billion of unknown payments. That's what the GAO says. What's unknown payments?
Those are probably the ones going to the Russian mafia with their hospice fraud.
So it just went out the door. We don't know where it went, essentially. $10 billion in underpayments, okay, and $8.4 in technically improper payments. Really incredible. 5 programs drive this, no surprise here. Medicare, Medicaid, the Earned Income Tax Credit, that's something we've talked about many times. That's a total scam. Of course, SNAP. This is one I wasn't aware of. The SBA's Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. What the hell is that? That's the first I've ever seen of that. Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. A cool $10 billion. Now just think about that. That could cover a year and a half of the state of Mississippi's general fund budget. $10 billion. Shuttered venue. I have no idea what that is. I assume it's some sort of federal money that's available to people who take occupancy of a shuttered property and invest in it, turn it into something of value, something constructive. I guess that's what it is. I've never heard of this before.
It was established by the, where'd it go? The Economic Aid to Hard-Hit Small Businesses, Nonprofits, and Venues Act as a part of COVID relief.
Okay.
And then it was amended by the American Rescue Plan.
We'll never know how much money we wasted on that whole COVID debacle. We'll never know. You can't count it all.
The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant provides emergency assistance for eligible performing arts businesses affected by COVID-19.
Oh my gosh. Oh, gosh. Oh, that's important. That's where your tax money, and again, let me be clear, half of every dollar we talk about here is borrowed. That's why we're $39 trillion in debt. So the GA...
By law, the program's mission is to support the ongoing operations of eligible live venues and operators, live venue promoters, theatrical producers, talent representatives, live performing arts organizations, operators, museums, and motion picture theaters.
You just made me sick. I'm going to upchuck now thinking about that.
$16 billion.
That's unbelievable. That's stupid. Good grief. So the GAO says the error rate in the earned income tax credit is 32.7%. I just want you to consider this for a second. What if that were the error rate in commercial air travel? What would that look like?
There'd be nobody at the airport.
That's right. And while it's kind of fresh on the mind, what if that were the error rate of the Secret Service? How many people would die?
Depending on who you ask, it might be that high.
That's true. That just blows me away. 32.7% error rate. We can't do better than that. Any private business that had a 32.7% error rate in some accounting function, say it's billing or it's paying your bills or your payroll, you're freaking bankrupt. That's the problem. I'm telling you, there are no consequences for this. No consequences for the people that administer all this stuff and create all these programs.
That's
Zero.
What happens when you fill the government with not my problem people and
That's
give them
right.
work.
We got law professor Christopher Green coming on Middays next. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Everyone, it's Middays from the Element Well studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now law professor Christopher Green. He's a professor at the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society at the Ohio State University and also at the Ohio State University Law School. Good to see you again, Professor. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you.
All right, so we got the Supreme Court. They're busy hearing cases and pumping out decisions, I guess, at this point. It's that time of the year. And our governor here of the state of Mississippi is obviously watching that very closely and has suggested that he will call a special session within a certain number of days after the Supreme Court rules on what could be a landmark case concerning voting rights / redistricting. Break it down for us.
Yeah, so this case, Louisiana versus Calais, and it is, I'm just recounting the procedural history of this case, and it's actually, there's another piece of litigation right before this one. But basically, this is an interaction between two principles that can come in collision. One is that you've got Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that says the extent to which traditionally disadvantaged groups are able to elect people gets to count as whether in whether people's voting rights have been abridged under the 15th Amendment. So because of this, because of the statute that Congress passed in 1982, they said it has caused a bunch of what they call them are majority minority districts. So Benny Thompson's district in Mississippi, one of the 4 congressional districts, is one of the premier instances. We carve up the state into 4 chunks, and one of them has enough of the delta to make it very clear that black folks can elect someone they want to Congress. And this is the case in lots of states across the South. So this is the original Voting Rights Act of 1965 got rid of a bunch of practices, required certain things, but then this was new in 1982. But there's a question. Wait a minute, is paying attention to race in drawing these district lines itself a constitutional problem? And this has started to become taken super seriously by the Supreme Court starting in 1993. So just 10 years after the Voting Rights Act got passed, a series of Supreme Court decisions came online that really makes it a big question whether this thing is constitutional. And so there's this constantly, there's a refrain in a lot of the Supreme Court cases saying we bracket the question. They say we're going to set to the side this question of whether or not compliance with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act counts as a compelling interest to satisfy the requirements that the 14th Amendment and also the 15th Amendment, but the 14th Amendment places on race-conscious decision-making by the government. Okay, well, the ban on race-conscious decision-making by the government got amped up considerably in 2023 in Students for Fair Admissions. By coincidence, in 2023, they also had a case about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And it seemed from some of the justices on the kind of left end of the court, they're like, wait a minute, didn't we just have a case that said Section 2 is fine? So one of the questions is like the relationship between this Allen versus Mulligan case, interpreting exactly what Section 2 means, and SFFA, which came out the same month. But so Louisiana, they're a little bit bigger than Mississippi. They had one majority minority district, but there was an argument that, hey, is that enough? Section 2 itself actually says you're not entitled to proportional representation, but the lack of proportional representation is sort of considered a factor. Since 1986, there's been these long times. Anyway, there's all those factors. Louisiana gets told you've got to have a second, more or less. It gets told by the federal court you've got to have a second majority minority district. Here's a map you could use. You can draw your own if you want. They draw another of their own, and then they immediately get sued. So that's this Louisiana versus Calais. Gets argued at the Supreme Court. Louisiana is saying, well, we don't really want to have to do this, but the court told us to do it, so isn't that enough of an excuse? We've got to do it. We've got to be allowed to do it. And then the Supreme Court's like, they hear it, they don't decide it last spring, and then they decide, okay, let's argue, whether or not the intentional creation of an additional majority minority district violates either the 14th or 15th Amendments. And it doesn't explicitly say, does Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act violate the 14th or 15th Amendments? But that's very, very, very closely looming in the background. So this is a question they argued last fall, and tick, tick, tick. These are elections that get affected. If they're going to do something, certainly that requires district lines to be redrawn, the earlier the better. So at some point, if this comes out in late June, there's going to be an argument that it's too late to redistrict for this fall's elections. That's congressional elections. Mississippi, the state elections aren't for another year, but if it came out tomorrow, so tomorrow there's going to be Supreme Court opinions. They say on the website, opinion may be released, but every time they say that, they will be released. So tomorrow, it's possibly going to be Louisiana versus Calais Day.
So for a non-legal person, it seems to me like the straightforward voting rights objective was to ensure that people have the right to vote, not that they have the right to vote for a particular candidate of a particular party. That seems to be where the confusion is.
Yeah, that's Justice Thomas's view. So he said in Alexander in 2024, he said, districts, who cares? The districts don't abridge anybody's right to vote.
Right.
So he would get out of the business entirely. So it's pretty clear. And in this context, it would mean that, the Voting Rights Act isn't gonna show up. Whether it's a little complicated exactly what Justice Thomas's view would entail in terms of the exact question presented in Calais. But his view is out there. It seems pretty unlikely that view is going to get 5 votes.
Okay.
It's possible. I don't think the others have committed themselves against it. But what they'll probably be more likely to do is, it will probably be, some number of justices will say they take Justice Thomas's view. And probably, it sounds from the oral argument last fall, that a number of justices will say, it applies to redistricting, but you can't just be blatantly race conscious.
Right.
So if you are improperly race conscious, that could violate the 15th Amendment. But when you have the remedy, you can't just be gratuitously race conscious. So then there's a question, well, can you have a race conscious remedy? And that is the SFFA question. So if you've got a history of discrimination, racial discrimination in higher ed, can you have affirmative action? And if so, for how long?
Yeah.
And if you've had a history like Mississippi has had, how long does how long is the shadow of Jim Crow is basically the question. And how long is the shadow? So, how long is the shadow in terms of setting up a system that, so it's always based on present day facts, but is Congress allowed to have that system based on present day facts because of all the history from the 50s and 60s and 70s? Now, I mean, there's a lot more history than we would like to have had.
Yeah, it seems like we're going beyond equality with respect to voting rights, and it's more like restitution, and it's like repayment.
Yeah, it has that feel. Gerrymandering in general produces some odd coalitions in its favor. So like Reynolds v. Sims, which requires equal districts, it gets used immediately by the legislature saying, if we've got to have absolutely up to the minute equal districts, we'll come up with these gerrymanders.
Yeah.
And turns out this is great for incumbents of both parties. So you get these coalitions where fine, give Benny Thompson a seat for life, as long as you give three Republicans seats for life.
Yeah.
And race consciousness in order to promote this duopoly is it doesn't seem to be what the 15th Amendment allows. But if redistricting has nothing to do with it, then they could be allowed to do it. So there's a complicated relationship between what the state is required to do and what they're allowed to do.
I got you.
So they're going to be told in Calais things they're not allowed to do, but there will be an implication pretty clearly about they're certainly allowed to comply with the Constitution.
We got a break right here. If you can hang with us, I got a couple more questions related to this specific to Mississippi. Can you hang with us? We got a short segment on the other side. We got law professor Christopher Green on the line. Stay with us.
At Fillmore Buick GM.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio, visiting with law professor Christopher Green, talking about, I guess, any day now. Professor, right, the Supreme Court could hand down, they have specific days, right, in which they release these decisions. But this Calais case out of Louisiana expected to be pivotal in this whole redistricting matter.
Oh, yeah, going to be huge in, especially in the South. So there's, I think, 5 or 6 states that it's going to be especially relevant to. So Louisiana, of course, involved, but Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. Texas, of course, had a big redistricting, trying to squeeze more gerrymandering, like Virginia. It's possible that they'll try to do it again after Calais, but it's a pretty titanic thing. They've been thinking about it for 30 years, right? 35 years close to.
Well, here's the question.
Yeah, they should have something interesting to say.
Okay, so we got our governor, who at this point has indicated that he'll call this special session to redraw our Supreme Court districts, and there are other offices, of course, in Mississippi that are tied to those districts as well. But there are calls from Republicans in the state to redraw our House districts, our 4 House districts, as you alluded to earlier, one of which is held by Congressman Benny Thompson since 1993, by the way. He's been there a while. And there are calls to redraw our districts to essentially in a way that would turn control of that district over or make it certainly more favorable for winning by a Republican candidate. And we're seeing Virginia just took similar action to go in the other direction. California has taken action. New York, you got other big blue states that are acting on this. It feels like that if the states that are essentially in the control of Republicans at the state level, such as Mississippi, don't reciprocate, they could lose out on seats, and the balance could tilt in favor of Democrats. Is this going to be legal, do you think, once this decision's handled down?
Well, so there's a lot of different considerations. The simplest way if you think we've got a Republican majority in the state, let's get 4 representatives, the simplest way to do that would be to just have at-large elections for all 4 seats.
Okay.
Just say, have a statewide election.
Yeah.
There's different ways you could do it. Actually, some of the ways you could do it would clearly get some minority candidates, maybe more ideologically diverse. So like some real hardcore constitutionalists could probably scrape together 30% of the vote to get kind of one of the top 4.
Yeah.
But Congress has told us, so Congress under Article 1, Section 4 has the power, kind of completely independent of the 15th Amendment, 14th Amendment, to tell states the manner in which they elect House representatives. And they told them, you've got to have districts unless there's certain circumstances in which you can have at-large elections. We actually had a case back in the 2000 redistricting related to that. But basically we couldn't do that. There would be a question especially, so in terms of legislators, be careful, little mouths, what you say. Be careful what you say in terms of your motivation. If you start talking about how much you hate Benny Thompson or something, and your grandpa was one of the people opposing Brown versus Board of Education, that'll get litigated. So dance like nobody's watching. Give your speeches in favor of redistricting like you're reading them aloud in a deposition, or it's on the cover of the New York Times, because it's all the core unconstitutional stuff that they might say in Cali about why can't you intentionally create more of these seats. That still applies to whatever constitutional restrictions are on opposing the existence of one. So not intentionally creating it, but saying, hey, we don't want to have folks like Benny Thompson. Oh, what do you mean? Like people like that? There's all kinds of questions that get raised in litigation like that. So it's interesting, and there's always questions about how aggressive to get. We got these 3, the Supreme Court districts, but there are also all these executive things, the PS, Public Service Commission,
Transportation, Public Service,
that don't. Right. Yeah, Reynolds v. Sims doesn't apply to them, so they've gotten decently malapportioned. I mean, different numbers of people. You represent different numbers of people if you're from the central, northern, or southern districts of Mississippi, which is a little weird. Yeah. A little weird. A lot of states have at-large elections for their state Supreme Courts.
Interesting. Well, in Mississippi, it's also the IHL board, as you're well familiar with. Same thing, tied to the Supreme Court district.
Yeah.
So,
and all these executive things. So I mean, I guess people in Oxford and Starkville, they're like, yeah, we should have a little bit of extra representation on the IHL because that's our boss. But
we got to go.
If we really are Republican, like small R Republican Democrats, small D Democrats, small R Republican, like the people vote, it's a little hinky.
We got to go. Appreciate you coming on, Professor. Thanks a lot, man.
Always great to see you. Take care.
Coming right back, folks. Your of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Are you thinking about retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. It's Gordon Fellows. In about an hour, he's the president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. We're going to dig into some new guidelines concerning mortgage qualification criteria, some new changes in the way FICO scores are computed and considered. The Fair Isaac Corporation, that's what FICO stands for. That's the most widely used credit scoring matrix used by mortgage lenders. And then we're also going to talk about a new rule concerning small business data collection. You don't want to miss that discussion, folks. This is just more Big Brother sort of stuff that I hope we can get rid of, honestly. So your markets today, kind of a mixed picture. The NASDAQ's down because OpenAI disappointed in its revenue and profit. The NASDAQ's down 315 at this moment. Earlier in the session, let's check it now, the Dow was up. It is again up 93 points. It's crossed the unchanged line a little bit this morning. And Rhino, your funny money, it's down rather sharply today.
Yeah, about 1%. It's still hovering around 76,000.
Right. And the other big news that's driving the markets, by the way, this broke this morning early, the United Arab Emirates. They said, we're bolting from this dang OPEC thing. Wow.
And OPEC Plus.
Yeah, and OPEC Plus. And so it's expected that that's going to shake up the entire organization there, and said that it's largely driven by the situation in the Strait was part of their decision. Now, just so you know, they are a wealthy country because there ain't a lot of people in it, and it's mostly from their sale of oil. They account for about 3% of global production, about 3 million barrels a day. Global production hovers around 100 to 103 barrels per day. This country produces 13.7 million barrels per day, consumes about 19. And so the UAE is kind of shaking up the whole oil landscape. And by the way, oil today, once again, last I checked, it had eclipsed $100. West Texas Intermediate, it may have fallen slightly below that. Still high 90s.
Yeah, it's hovering right around 100.
100, okay. So Brent crude, the other grade, was what, 104, 105, something like that?
It's at 111.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that spread continues to be rather significant. Typically, there are a couple of bucks that separate them, but because of the situation in Iran, it's been rather consistently over the last couple of months, $10 to $12 between the two
grades of crude oil. So the bad news there is that your price at the pump is going to stay elevated. It doesn't seem to be any end in sight. Now, Iran has come forward and said, this is like this morning, whoever the heck's in charge, I'm not sure. Hey, we're willing to talk about opening up the strait, but we don't want to talk about that nuclear thing. It's basically what they've said. Am I mistaken? Has the president not been crystal clear that that's not an option? That you've got to discontinue your nuclear ambitions and turn over your enriched uranium or no deal? I don't think he has been confusing with those demands and those requirements to get something done. But right now, it just seems like that we're just in limbo, that we're at a standstill.
Well,
impasse.
Iran is running out of places to store oil that they can't get out.
That's the other news today as well, right? That they're producing oil, they don't have any, they can't ship it, can't sell it, so they're trying to store it in derelict storage facilities.
Yeah, they just recently resurrected a tanker that hadn't been in service for half a decade to just have somewhere to put it.
The country is being significantly harmed and impaired, though. 93 million people, of course, live in Iran. You would think that their regime would care a little bit more about that than, I don't know, nuclear weapons. But they don't. They literally put nuclear weapons that they intend to use not for defensive purposes, for offensive, nefarious, malicious purposes. And they place those above the health, safety, and welfare of their own countrymen. That's how sick they are. But you can't ignore the fact that the elevated price of gas is a political factor. And we've got midterms a short 7 months, really 6 months away now. And so that is being considered by Republicans, and it needs to be considered. Gas prices are up. You got congressional Republicans going to the exits, vacating seats. Democrat enthusiasm is ramping up 6 months into the midterms. So the Republicans need a good message, I believe, and they need to get back in their home areas and promote that message. The political strategists, it is said in private for Republicans, are grimly trading synonyms such as sour, ugly, bad, bleak. But I would say that a lot can change between now and then. We still do have 6 months, and we could get this Iran thing put to bed and start to see the price of what we consume trending favorably to consumers. Now, tomorrow, from a macro level perspective in the economy, is a big dang announcement day. We got, I believe, 4 of the Mag 7 reporting tomorrow, and then 1 on Thursday. That single company reporting on Thursday is Apple. We've got, who is it tomorrow? Rhino, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and 1 more reporting tomorrow. Can't remember the other one at this point of the Mag 7. And then on Thursday, again, it is Apple.
Tomorrow is Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta.
Okay. It's Amazon, I think I may have skipped. So, yeah, they're all reporting in, weighing in tomorrow. It's pretty unusual to have 4 of the 7 all announcing their quarterly performance on the same day. I don't remember that happening in a while. And then within 24 hours, you got another big one of the 7. That would be Apple. And they're going to talk about how well they did and how they performed in the prior quarter. So all eyes will be on that, as well, of course, as the Federal Reserve not expected to adjust interest rates to any extent as they meet. It will be Jay Powell's final report as the Fed chairman. And
it seems like the Magnificent Seven have kind of coalesced around similar dates. Not quite this close, but they all reported within a pretty small time frame in October of 2025, and then before that in July of 2025.
I just don't remember 4 on the exact same day. Typically, I think I remember maybe 2, 3, but and across a week is usually what you get. But in a 24-hour period, having 5 of the 7 is fairly extraordinary. And I don't know what to expect. I know this: the traders are watching, and if the reports are disappointing, I think you'll see a huge sell-off, because it's the attitude is that you got to keep going and growing and increasing substantially to keep the trade going, to keep the investment going. It is absolutely true that the massive amount of investment in CapEx these companies are making is driving GDP growth. It accounts for about half, unbelievably so, about half of the increase in economic output in this country is all coming from the CapEx, the investments being made by these companies as they build out their artificial intelligence capabilities. We see it right here in Mississippi with the tens of billions of dollars being invested in hyperscale data center facilities, and that's happening across the country. Although Bernie Sanders is doubling down on his call for a moratorium on data centers. Jeez, he just thinks they're going to make too much money.
Can we just stop listening to Bleeding Heart old farts for once?
Led Zeppelin bumping us out of this segment. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Man, oh man. Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. Just watching old Zoran Mondani, the communist mayor of the city of New York, that has now announced, we were just talking about this earlier, a new racial equity plan. Good grief. All the problems you have in the city of New York, and really in the country, and this is the Democrats' approach to addressing those issues. It's always, like we said, they genuflect at the altar of race, climate, and radical gender nonsense. That is what drives them, what guides them, what they place as priority above everything else. And I'm going to see if I can pull this up. This is something I ran across a couple of days ago, and it's just another example of how this crazy ideology, in particular the gender one, is the one that blows me away maybe more than anything else. I guess because it's a little bit more recent in nature. I don't remember so much focus on one's gender identity and gender treatment and all this sort of crazy stuff and all the deference that is extended. But here's one, and what really grinds my gears is folks that listen know is when it involves children.
You want to be a sicko, wacko as an adult? Knock yourself out. Free country as far as I'm concerned. You begin thrusting that on children, and you take advantage of your position as an adult in settings such as school. Because they know that. They know they've got a captive audience. And they will foist this crap on them. Because they're miserable people. Here's a superintendent, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Carrboro City Schools. And so there's a book. This is unbelievable to me. That children are reading, and I'm not exactly sure what grade, but it's an elementary school, so that's all you really need to know. And it depicts essentially two males in BDSM gear, embracing each other. They don't think there's anything wrong with this. And next to them is a female that's got a top on, a blouse on, that's the LGBTQ colors, the rainbow colors, holding a sign that says, "All we need is love." It's just unbelievable. Now, honestly, and by the way, the two individuals that are embracing in the BDSM gear, I can't even, let's see, what is it? Bondage?
Domination and
sadism. Yeah, there you go. One of them may be a female. I can't tell. But, of course, it's a requirement. They're a white and a black person. Got to have that. That's it. That's a requirement. It doesn't matter. You can clearly see this dude is wearing the stupid-looking BDSM outfit. This is in children's books. What the world? This guy needs to be fired immediately. He signed off on it, it's being reported. And so parents have gotten wind of it. This guy's name is Rodney Trice, superintendent of the schools. And he's asked by the school board, "Don't you think this is inappropriate?" No, he says that. And so some parents have gotten together, banded together, and they have published the phone number of the school that you can call to demand that he be terminated. This is absolutely sick. What is wrong with these people?
Yeah, Trice was asked, materials that talk about sexuality, describing sexual acts, illustrating sexual acts shouldn't be in elementary schools. And can we just agree on that and just say we're not going to do that going forward? To which Trice responded, "I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. What I'm saying is that we trust the professionalism of our school librarians."
Oh, my gosh. It's incredible to me that this has even become an issue in this country. Now, I'm now curious as to whether or not we have any restrictions against this in the state of Mississippi, perhaps at the Department of Education level, at the district level. What's to prevent some radical nutcase like this Trice guy, who's the superintendent of the schools, by the way, not just an individual school principal or teacher, the superintendent of the district. What's to prevent this same sort of content from being forced on our children in the public schools in Mississippi? And maybe there is something that I'm not aware of. And I'm all ears, ready to hear that.
I'm fairly certain there was a bill passed, 3 years ago now?
When all this was really ramping up, yeah. I hope so. And maybe that's the case. I'm not being critical here. I'm just really being more curious than anything, because the fact that this is allowed and condoned.
I don't know that bill specifically targeted library books. I think it was more digital communication.
Okay. Well, I do know that there's been lots of discussion around the state of inappropriate materials in public school libraries.
And that's largely come from parents that have discovered this, have been exposed to it. Just incredible. That
it was House Bill 1315, which went into effect July 1 of 2023, which forced digital vendors to block materials deemed sexually oriented for minors.
Okay, but that doesn't address hard copy books, right, in a library, and that's what this is. So, but surely, if the bill could do so and block such content that comes across in digital format, it could also be done for hard copy format. If anybody is aware of any crazy stuff like this going on in Mississippi, I'm curious. Let us know. But and you look at where I'm going here. I hate to profile someone, but you can look at this guy and tell he's wacko, right? You just know. Yeah, this is the kind of guy that would say, "Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that." He just looks like it. I apologize for coming to that conclusion, drawing that conclusion after just my eyes observing him and my brain processing the image.
The same people that are espousing that children need to be exposed to sexuality are the same people espousing that we evolved. And if you believe in evolution, then you evolved the ability to recognize patterns. So
That's
you don't
true.
have to apologize for recognizing the pattern of insanity, craziness, psychopathy, and sociopathy that's evident in their eyes.
It's totally true. 100% right. And that's exactly what my eyes and my brain said right there. Just boom, yep, wacko. Unbelievable. Now, we have someone on the C Spire text line that tends to, every now and then, will weigh in with something that's just crazy. And we have that today. And today it's targeting Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. Who he's calling for, or I don't know, it could be a she. I don't know the name of this person. All we have is a phone number. Said shots would be fired. I don't know what they're talking about. What's that referring to?
Yeah, in the lead up to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I think Caroline Leavitt was on Fox, and she was describing what she believed. I think she said Trump will have a very fiery speech. Shots will be fired, or something along those lines.
Oh, okay. So we're unable to discern between
if you're a loser leftist like the text, yeah.
Oh. So just metaphors versus reality, right? Can't do that? I see.
When you're ate up with the stupidity of being a Democrat, it's really hard to exist in the real world.
Oh, man. I saw a video, this is from Mo's clip of the ballroom after the shooting, and one older gentleman did not cower on the floor. He sat there quietly and continued to eat his meal. Yeah, Rhino was talking about that yesterday. And after you talked about the folks walking out with the bottles of wine, there have been some national media reports on it as well. We're stepping aside for a break. Stay with us. We're in the Element Well studio.
From theSeabrook.com, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
So turn around, let him go. Then he said, you better watch your step, or you're gonna get hurt yourself. Someone's gonna tell you lies, cut you down to size. Don't do me like that, don't do me like that. Oh, I love you, baby. Don't do me like that, don't do me like that, don't do me like that.
Well, Chris from Oxford kind of scolded me, Rhino. He said, don't apologize for my profiling. I know. It's just my nature, and I guess I'm self-conscious about that. Try not to always judge people. But like you say, you get to a point where through the years, you know, your eyes, your brain start to work together, and you've seen it enough, you've witnessed it enough. It's like, yeah, it's pretty clear there's a problem there. And that's the case with this person.
Yeah, you never see somebody with the power bangs and the big chunky glasses waving an American flag. So you start to recognize maybe they don't really love America.
There's a pattern, no doubt. And that's something that humans are pretty good at, is detecting patterns. Even animals are good at that, right? By the way, on the C Spire text line, I had reported about this nutcase in the elementary schools, Chapel Hill city schools. I guess it's more than elementary schools. The BDSM content was being used and available, accessible to children in elementary schools. And so folks are encouraging calls to the school district to demand this nut be terminated. And we got a text wanting the number, requesting the number. Here it is, folks. If you're interested in calling, 919-967-8211. 919-967-8211. Yeah, why not? That's the way you affect action and change. No doubt about it. And this guy thinks he can...
That's why the left has gotten their way for a couple generations.
That's true.
Because they're the only party that has enough losers sitting around that have nothing better to do than to waste everybody else's time until people get tired of it and just go, fine, do what you want to do.
That's totally true. Paula Meridian was talking about the ballroom scene the other night, and he says, yeah, I read one post that said this older gentleman was a germaphobe and said he wasn't going to get down on that nasty floor. I saw that as well. Also, Paul says, you know, things are changing when Bill Maher starts telling liberals that they're wrong about kids being transgender at the age of 3 or 5. Yeah, he tends to be a breath of fresh air, just common sense and just unmitigated truth sometimes.
He's like the last true classical liberal.
I agree.
At least with a platform.
That's right.
The rest of them have devolved into Democrat socialists, communists, and crazies.
No doubt, including Jimmy Kimmel and his despicable statements. And the First Lady, Melania Trump, I think is absolutely justified in calling for ABC to pull his show and to send him packing. Jason Starkville makes a good point about this nutty superintendent that thinks it's perfectly fine to expose children to this ridiculous, demented sexual content, says should check his computer for child pornography. Yeah. You would hope and think that the school would have technology safeguards in place that would prevent such content. But who knows, right? He may have figured out a way to circumvent those measures, those protections.
Well, I mean, think about it psychologically. If you're okay with exposing kids to sexual material, then you've probably already crossed that barrier personally before.
I think you're probably right. Absolutely. Maybe rationalizing it on his own behalf, which is even sicker. And it makes you wonder, how does this person get to be a superintendent of children? Wow. Meanwhile, up in New York City, they got a $30 minimum wage coming at them. $30. So they're predicting up in New York that a hamburger could be as much as $33. Yeah. You know what's going to happen is there won't be anybody working for $30. That's just crazy. Doing minimum wage jobs. They'll be earning $30, but not working jobs that typically pay a more reasonable minimum wage. Now, I've always been a proponent of ending the minimum wage, and I know that's not always popular, depending on the circles. Just let the market figure it out, work it out. We don't need a minimum wage, and I know that the left goes crazy on that. Oh, these companies, they would just exploit all their workers. No, not in a robust economy where there's significant demand for talent, personnel that generally exceeds supply. The market will take care of that. I know they have zero confidence in market forces. We have to tell you what to do. You can't make those decisions, right? But it's incredible. They would also eliminate the tip wage credit as well, meaning, and all that really means, folks, is to meet the minimum wage standard. If you work in a fine dining restaurant or any restaurant where tips are customary, you can make some assumptions about the amount of those tips and pay a wage, can the employer, the restaurant employer, that's below the minimum wage because the tips actually equal or typically exceed that. And there's some math involved in that. That's been law for a long time. But New York's thinking about ending that, meaning it doesn't matter if they earn tips or not, you're paying them $30 an hour. And think that's perfectly fine. This is more of this communist workers' party crap that you're seeing really take hold in this country and spread really sort of crazy. They say, in response to this $30 minimum wage, restaurant owners are profit-grabbing monopolists. Oh, my gosh. Rich in Biloxi said, just heard the cry of millions of liberals about places automating out humans. That's absolutely happening. It's going to happen. And that's, I think, Rhino, the modern-day response to equivalent to the response of the manufacturing industry back when unions had such a stronghold in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s. And companies said, we can't pay this and produce goods at a price point that the market will pay for, will buy. It's not a viable financial model. And that's when they started offshoring. That's what drove it more than anything. Now, what the left will tell you is it's the greed, it's corporate greed. Without any regard or understanding of what the heck they're even saying.
It's because they base all of their emotion-led decisions on the debunked ranting and ramblings of a worthless waste of oxygen named Karl Marx.
That's totally true. I know you're not a big fan of Karl Marx. It taught me something I wasn't aware of, is that he was just a filthy, dirty human being.
Oh, yeah, just a worthless waste of oxygen. But his whole premise is that it's the labor theory of value, that however much labor you put into something is what it's worth to the market. And it doesn't make a dang bit of sense. I can't knit at all. So let's say I try to knit a sweater, and it takes me 4 years to knit a sweater. That's 4 years of labor. It's still a crappy sweater made by somebody that can't knit. Does that 4 years of labor add any value to that sweater on the market?
Nope. The market does not reward hard work. I've said it a million times. It rewards value. And it turns out sometimes
a glass of water is worth a fortune in the middle of the desert, but if you're next to a body of water, it's not worth a whole heck of a lot.
It's true. It's a great analogy. Yeah, that's a hard concept to understand. That you don't get rewarded for working hard. You get rewarded for producing value. Now, let's be honest. Generally speaking, you got to work hard to produce value. They usually work hand in hand, and sometimes that working hard, I know it typically it's perceived as physical labor. That's not working hard. There are many ways. Working hard can mean just stressing out over taking risk to produce that value. That's deemed as working hard. That's just the second order thinking I know that they don't get. But remember Joe Biden constantly on the campaign trail pronouncing, it's time to reward work, not wealth, which of course insinuates that everyone who ever achieved any degree of wealth didn't work hard. And that's total horse hockey, Joe. You're a person who enriched yourself and your family, and you hadn't worked a legitimate day in your dang life. What value has he provided to society by that measure? Little Bread with Guitar Man bumping us out of this segment. My favorite bread tune there. Coming right back in the Element Well studio. Don't forget Gordon Fellows with the Bankers at 12:05.
Polyumpa, Mississippi.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone, on the C Spire text line. I called the number at the school there in North Carolina. They put me on hold as soon as I started talking. Not surprised. Good work there. Jeez. This is really how you make things happen, though, is it not? You have to get involved, spend a little time. Appreciate you doing that and exposing the nuttiness. And not just writing it off and ignoring it, because then I think it just emboldens the crazy people even more. And then the people to whom he reports, they don't feel as motivated. In this case, it would be the school board to take action. But clearly, this is a situation where action needs to be taken. So that's an interesting reaction, though, that, it was just put you on hold. The world needs natural gas, but the Strait of Hormuz has cut off a significant source of it. This country is the biggest exporter of natural gas, significant producer. In fact, we do, in terms of natural gas, produce a lot more than we consume. Not the case with crude oil, but absolutely the case with liquid natural gas. It has been a 2-month pause on LNG shipments out of Qatar, and that is causing lots of pain in Europe. Italy, Taiwan, South Korea all depend on natural gas for powering electricity, to heat homes, and many of their industrial facilities, those plants also rely on natural gas for energy. But the gas markets, of course, have been disrupted, and Europe is potentially really at risk. There have been some. So we talked about Iran earlier and the problems that country is currently experiencing. And that's based on what information we can get out of the country, honestly, because the regime has kind of got it all locked up. But this is starting to have a significant impact on the EU, the European countries as well. And we'll see where all that goes. We've been building, as this country, export terminals for some time and continue to do so, but not quite ready, for prime time to meet the needs. Turns out natural gas is about a quarter of all global energy, accounts for about a quarter of it. Didn't know that. That's according to the International Energy Agency. Demand has been steadily increasing. That's mainly because of the increased demand for electricity. And a lot of electricity producing plants are powered by the ultimate underlying fuel is natural gas. That's the case in this country to a great extent. So again, it's the old Strait of Hormuz that is causing those problems. Something else that's a problem that the state auditor has exposed is illegal immigration, about 100 million, and they've got some calculations they've shared on how they arrived at that figure. It's somewhat of an estimate, but it's still $100 million. the estimate is that there are some 22,000. They term them as undocumented, which essentially means they're illegal. Because if you're a legal immigrant, you have legal status, you have documents to support that and authenticate that legal status. 22,000. And so there's health, there's education, and then there's incarceration. With respect to health, this goes back again to the emergency Medicaid program and again to the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which was signed into law by President Reagan in 1986. It simply states that hospitals that operate emergency rooms that also participate in the federal health care programs of Medicare and Medicaid must, and this is the exact word used in the law, must stabilize anyone who enters the emergency room regardless of their immigration status or ability to pay. In fact, pretty sure, Rhino, that they can't even ask immigration status. You can't ask a patient, hey, are you a citizen or not? Don't think you can do that. I don't even think schools can do that. And our schools are compelled by law to enroll any child that lives in a school district, again, regardless of immigration status. So this is a problem, and it's driven, again, by Joe Biden's open borders and, honestly, decades of the flow of illegals across the border, but really ratcheted up under Biden. I don't think we know how many came across or in this country. It would be pure speculation. Time for Fox News and SuperTalk News, and then it's Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year, I hope she holds on.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays. We, of course, are in the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. Hey, Gordon, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Gerard, thanks for having me. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, man. So I was just tracking some of the stuff happen in your world in the financial industry and a couple of things that caught my attention. I guess I'll start with the first is maybe some new guidelines concerning credit ratings and credit scoring used by the mortgage lending industry. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is a new sort of rule that's come down from the FHFA, which is the regulator for Fannie and Freddie, which are primarily the purchasers in the secondary market that purchase mortgages that are originated by banks and other lenders. They are, they're not using the term piloting, but they're kind of rolling out slowly a trial version of a new credit scoring tool. So they've always been FICO, and that's still a tool that's available, but they've begun to also use another new credit scoring tool called Vantage Score. And Vantage Score, I think, is interesting. It uses data outside of just the ability to repay loans, right? So it's also data around payments. So if you're an individual who maybe you've never had a credit card or had a mortgage loan before, but you're a renter, and you have a long history of being able to pay your rent on time, if you have a history of being continuously paying your phone bill and continuously paying your utilities, then this new type of credit score would give you some credit for that, right? And so I think the idea and the goal was a good one. It is to help folks, primarily with first-time home buyers who may be credit score low because they just don't have a lot of credit history. They haven't borrowed a lot to qualify for mortgages using some what I guess what you would call non-traditional data. Now, a lot of community banks in Mississippi have used that type of data for a long time. They keep the loan on the books, right? The bank would make the loan using like payment history for phone bills or utilities or rent. And the loan just wouldn't qualify for the secondary market. So the bank would originate the loan, keep it on the books, probably have a 5-year balloon on it, or maybe an adjustable rate. And every few years, the bank and the borrower would sit down and make an adjustment and kind of look at it. Ideally, this new program, if it becomes widely accepted, would allow those kind of borrowers to qualify for 15 and 30 years so they don't have to deal with that adjustable feature, which I think is a good thing. We'll see how it plays out. It's still very new. I don't know of any banks in Mississippi that have adopted this yet for purposes of conforming with Fannie and Freddie guidelines. So it's interesting, and it kind of fits into the broader narrative that this administration has had around we need to address housing from several different points of view. So I think last time you and I were on, I was on with you. We talked about a new executive order the president had just issued related to changing several mortgage-related rules. This is kind of a follow-up and kind of in step with that executive order. Okay.
Yeah, great explanation. So at first when I saw it, Gordon, I had kind of memories of the subprime crisis, and I was concerned that this may be leading us down that same path. That doesn't seem to be the case here, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, that is a narrative that's developed here, and all of us that lived through 2008, 2009, I think anytime there are any changes to any kind of mortgage rules, we're all kind of like, okay, let's think about that and make sure we're not, let's make sure we learn the lessons from that we were supposed to learn. But I think the goal here is a good goal of is there a way to, particularly for first-time home buyers, folks that are low credit score, not because of any fault of theirs, not because they haven't paid people back, but just because they haven't really had a chance to prove their ability to repay. And the bank was going to look at their income like they always would. The bank is going to look at their total financial picture. Sure. This gives some credit score credit for financial responsibility. Yeah. And I think that's not a bad thing if it's executed right.
Well, a couple of things that caught my attention when you were discussing it is, I guess the first is, I wasn't aware that there are banks that are, I guess, collecting and considering gathering that information today. I wasn't aware of that. I mean, so literally then, did they talk to applicants about, hey, provide me a history or give me authority to review the history of your payment of your utility bills, your rent, and the like? And that's particularly in low income areas, particularly with first time home buyers. The challenge for those types of loans is they're never going to be you can't sell them on the secondary market. They're never going to conform with Fannie and Freddie. Yeah. And so the banks don't make a lot of those kind of loans at each bank, because if you're going to hold that risk on your books, then you got to hold capital against it, and it ties up other things you can do, right? So it's a riskier proposition for the bank than making a conforming mortgage. Particularly in markets, low income markets around the state, that's always been an important tool. It's always had that balloon and adjustable feature with it, right? Yeah. And so the change here is that in the long run, if this becomes sort of regularly acceptable, then it adds maybe a 15 or a 30-year option to borrowers that right now only have a 5-year option in a balloon. Okay, what's the response from your members? What are they saying? Yeah, I think it's so new. We're still kind of digesting it, right? I mean, and I think I don't even know yet how you have to be designated by Fannie and Freddie to qualify, right? So not every bank and not every mortgage lender can use this new credit score program yet. And so I'm not even sure yet I understand the process that a bank and my membership would have to go through to get qualified. I think they're probably rolling it out to sort of the large national mortgage lenders first. But I don't know that for certain. So I haven't really had a lot of members ask me questions about it yet. We are all just kind of reading about it and trying to figure out what it really means. So we have our convention next week. I'm sure this is going to be something we talk about, and I'll get back with you. I'll report to you sort of what questions I get when
I'm with a bunch of my members next week.
So are they required to adhere to these revised guidelines, or is it sort of optional if they wanted to dip into it and maybe increase their loan opportunities?
So you have options. You can use the new what's called a Vantage Score 4.0 score, or you can use the traditional FICO score.
Okay.
So it's not replacing FICO.
Okay.
But for a long time, only FICO has been really the only conforming credit score tool, and so it creates a little competition, which I think is good, right? In the lending process. And then it also creates a broader set of tools in the long run.
All right. Well, that makes sense. So it just kind of, as you said, just kind of expands the options maybe. And it is kind of an issue. I think we have to admit that, hey, you want to change over from and transition from renting to owning. And, you've been responsible at paying your rent, but that doesn't show up on your credit report.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. Right. So maybe you got a low balance credit card. Maybe that's the only thing that's generating your credit score. And, that may not get you a high enough of a FICO score to qualify. So, I mean, I think the goal here is, let's broaden the tools that lenders can use still responsibly. If people are responsible are financially responsible, if they got a history of being financially responsible, then, maybe we ought to be able to get them in a mortgage instead of being a renter.
Okay.
I think that's really their goal.
That makes total sense. So the other issue that caught my attention was this small business data rule that I had kind of forgotten about, and it seems like that it's raised its ugly head again. But this is from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right, Gordon? And this would require, I guess, financial institutions to collect some of this profiling information on small businesses. Tell us about this.
Yeah. So this has been in process for over a decade. This was actually required by Dodd-Frank. So, if you go back to the beginning of this, it's part of the Dodd-Frank law. And Dodd-Frank was all about mortgages, right? Yep. It was the whole financial crisis was mortgage related. And Congress, in its wisdom, sort of said, you know what, we also ought to put some data collection about small business lending here.
Yeah.
And so we were opposed to it being included in Dodd-Frank as an industry. We've been opposed to it in several different forms as it's kind of worked through the rule writing process. We're, 12 or 13 years past the passage of Dodd-Frank, beyond the passage of Dodd-Frank, and it still hasn't actually been put in place yet. There's been we could talk for 3 hours about the process that this rule has gone through. There's been litigation in California. A consumer group sued the first Trump administration saying they had to implement it and they were trying not to. There's been litigation in Texas, against the Biden administration saying the rule that was implemented went way too far. We agreed with that that litigation. And so what we've seen now is OMB is or CFPB has filed notice with OMB that they're prepared to finalize the rule. We don't know exactly what it's going to be yet. Our hope in the sense is that it's going to be a much tighter rule than the Biden folks contemplated, but it's in statute, and so it's going to have to be done until Dodd-Frank gets amended.
Can you hang with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
We got Gordon Fellows. Stay with us.
Hey, this is Bob. Just walked in.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're talking with Gordon Fellows. He's the president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. So, Gordon, can you share with the folks exactly what we're talking about in terms of this small business data rule, the information that financial institutions would be required to collect from prospective debtors here?
So we're not entirely sure yet, as funny as that sounds. So let me start with, if you kind of look at small business as the backbone of Mississippi economically, it's a really important category. And, you kind of look at the SBA data on how many businesses in Mississippi would qualify as small businesses, depending on the year, maybe 97, 98, 99%, right? So almost every business in the state in a lot of ways qualifies as small business. So this rule would have a really vast impact here. And to your specific question of what's going to be the required data, the Biden version of the rule. So the statute, let me start with what Dodd-Frank says. Dodd-Frank has like 12 fields. You have to collect 12 pieces of data. The Biden rule took that 12 and expanded it to about 85, which we thought was significant administrative overreach. And we expect that when the new Trump version of the rule gets filed by the CFPB in the next few days, maybe next week, it will be back to only the statutory mandates. So I don't know that for sure yet, but I think that's probably what we'll see. Then the other sort of question is, which banks are going to have to, or which lenders, not only banks, are going to have to gather and report this data. How many? And so the Biden folks sort of said, well, if you originate 100 small business loans a year, then you have to report, which is just about every lender in the country. We expect that the Trump administration will probably set that threshold much higher, so it will probably exclude some of the smallest lenders. And then the other question is sort of, what is a small business? The Biden rule said any business that had annual revenue for 2 years of $1 million is small. I'm sorry, $5 million is small, right? And that's a lot. That's a lot of businesses, right? And so we think the Trump administration will lower the number of what it means to be a small business to exclude what I would consider medium-sized businesses. Okay. So we'll see. That number may go down from 5 million to 1 million or less than 1 million in annual revenue. I'm not sure. So we'll see what the final rule says. I think that if I'm a small business owner in Mississippi, I'm going to say to my member of Congress, hey, this part of Dodd-Frank really needs to be repealed. And there's been attempts to do that. There's a bill in the House right now that would do that. The House Banking Committee actually reported a bill last week that would have made significant changes to the statute. It's not a full repeal, but it would tighten the statute up a good bit. And my long-term fear is, that over the last 3 presidential administrations now, Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump, this rule has swung like a pendulum, right? And it will go really, really far one way, and impact a lot of people. And then it'll get narrowed, and then it'll go far depending on who's in the White House. And you and I've talked about this before, right? Financial regulation that swings based on who's in the White House is generally not good for anybody. And so what I hope is we can get a really, really narrow, tailored version of this rule that minimizes the impact on small business owners and their employees. And that gets sort of stuck in place for a long time. Broadly, more importantly, it would be excellent for Congress to repeal this section of Dodd-Frank. I think that will be hard to do in the Senate right now.
It feels like that this is busy work that I don't feel like accomplishes anything. I'm not sure exactly what the goal and objective is, unless it's just, I got you, you're discriminating, I guess, in certain business practices. And the government feels like they've got to insert themselves into that process.
Yeah, I think that was why it was added, right? It's let's get a better sense of, is there discriminatory practices in small business lending. I've always said, and my members always say, you can pay us back, we want to make you the loan, right? If you've got a good idea that 100%. You can make money on, then let's make you the loan, right? I do worry, that you're right. There's busy work and there's sort of aggregation of data that has to happen. That's going to slow down the lending process. So if you think about a self-employed subcontractor, let's say, and he needs to borrow some money because he just got a job, and it's Friday and the job starts Monday, and he's got to go buy some materials over the weekend. okay, we'll make you the loan on Friday so you can go get materials and pay us back in 3 weeks or whatever, right? And now I'm going to have to ask you at least 10 questions, maybe 15, right? And I got to record all that stuff. And maybe now that Friday loan, it really takes me until Wednesday the next week. And so you've lost 4 or 5 days. The project could have already been over, right? And so this is going to slow down commerce to collect all this data. There's also going to be costs associated with collecting all this data, and it's going to be publicly reportable. And so what is the government going to do to protect the data that gets reported about these small business borrowers, right? Like there's real risk around that too. And so there are lots of real world implications about a rule like this that, it sounds really technical and boring, but it could have a real chilling effect on speed to market, on credit availability and cost of credit. And it could also create significant privacy risk. And so that's why I think it needs to be repealed. But it's part of Dodd-Frank, and repealing pieces of Dodd-Frank has proven to be difficult.
Yeah, 2009, I think, is when Dodd-Frank was passed. Obamacare was 2010. That was really the two major pieces of legislation passed in President Obama's entire 8 years in office. And just so that our folks will know, it's collecting data by financial institutions on loan applicants, the data, race, ethnicity, sex. It's all the gambit of these physical profile sort of stuff that really has nothing to do with the ability, as you say, of the borrower to repay that loan. I don't know why the government thinks that banks literally discriminate on that basis. Yeah, you know what? You couldn't run a successful business. It doesn't matter what the industry is if you try to limit yourself in that way.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about here, too, we were talking about mortgages in the first segment.
Yeah.
Mortgages are pretty common, no matter where you are, right? Like if I'm buying a home in Madison or a home in Gulfport or a home in Tupelo, the way the lender is going to structure my mortgage loan is pretty similar.
Yeah.
But small businesses are like all over the spectrum.
Yeah.
And a small business that is in the contracting business in Madison County is way different than a shrimper in Biloxi.
Sure.
Who's way different than a forester in North Mississippi. And one of the questions that we've had is, is a small farmer a small business? We don't think he should be, right? And ag world's a totally different thing. So exclude the farmers, right? Exclude other types of businesses. But so if you have to standardize your data collection for what is a tailored and bespoke product for every different borrower, then you lose the ability to tailor the product some because you have to prove that you asked the questions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I really worry about what that means for entrepreneurs like you and folks who need banks to be able to be really flexible. All of a sudden now, because I got to gather this data, I lose some of that flexibility that you, the small business owner, you, the entrepreneur, would benefit from.
So before we go, ask you to comment on this. I've seen reports that bankruptcy filings are up about 12% in the past year. Is that affecting your industry?
So I haven't heard that from my members yet. I've seen some stuff about that. I've been particularly, paying attention to the ag industry. That's such an important sector here. And that, there have been some parts of the country where there's been some significant increases in ag bankruptcy. So far, most of my members tell me, they haven't really seen a lot of that, but we continue to worry about that sector. And now, I guess they have more problems to deal with related to fertilizer now too. So, there's folks that are getting squeezed out there. I have not seen a lot of bankruptcies yet.
So I'll just say, as we are about to get bumped out here, that one of the challenges, and I'm telling something you obviously already know, for your industry, healthcare similar, maybe more so in your industry, is these rule policy making bureaucratic agencies can do all this stuff often without any specific authorization from Congress, and the only way you can undo it or challenge it is to take them to court. We got about 30 seconds. What do you think?
You're exactly right. That had to happen a lot during the previous administration. We've not seen as much of that during this administration. But there's there's way too much administrative flexibility, and Congress needs to begin to reinsert itself.
Totally agree. Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Gerard. Good to see you.
We're coming right back, folks.
From theSeabrook.com, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Oh, so a teacher in Milwaukee, Kaukauna? I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Kaukauna. Sounds like something you'd see in Hawaii, but this is in an area north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Been placed on administrative leave after sparking outrage, going out to that social media and mocked failed assassination attempts and calling to make American great assassins again. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, his social media post said, "I'm not impressed with recent presidential assassins. It's blanking embarrassing. Booth, Guido, Cholgaz, Oswald must all be spinning in their graves. MAGAA, make Americans great assassins again."
Unbelievable. And, okay, I got to say it again. I just looked at a photo of this individual. It's clear as day that such a person that looks like this would post this, right? Is it not? It's evident.
First glance, you could tell there is a screw loose.
There's no doubt about it. Oh, man. Golly, that would be Patrick Meyer, a social studies teacher. Oh, isn't he something? This is, he's been placed on administrative leave, right? Isn't that what I just saw?
Yeah.
Well, I applaud the school district for taking swift action. What is wrong with these people? I know I keep saying it. I'm struggling to comprehend it.
Why does it seem to be a majority of the time it's teachers?
I don't know that either. I really don't. Because I know there are tons of fabulous, well-meaning, dedicated, great role model teachers. Many in the state of Mississippi.
What is it about the profession that brings out the crazy?
I don't know. I can't figure that out either. I really can't. It seems to be more prevalent. It occurs at a higher rate within the profession. It's like they're not happy. That's the fundamental problem, is they're just miserable humans.
Well, that's the foundational principle for all the liberal leftists and nonsensical blowhards.
Yeah, I agree.
Envy.
That's 100% right. And to that point, looks like out there in California they got enough signatures to put the old wealth tax on the ballot come this fall. It's a one-time deal they want to levy. What is it, 5% on all the wealth over a certain threshold?
Yep.
And they say they need the money for programs, right?
Like combating homelessness.
Right. And free child care and all that sort of stuff. It's the same series of program objectives that you hear from the left over and over again.
Without ever seeing any meaningful results other than funneling money to friends and family.
That's exactly what it is.
Officials that delegate that money.
It's a billionaire tax is what they're calling it. Applies to approximately 200 Californians with a net worth exceeding $1 billion. I actually thought there were 400 in California. I know a lot of them have moved, so they may not be there anymore. We've got roughly 900 plus in the entire country. That's almost half of the entire global population number of billionaires, of which nearly half are in California.
So I'm looking at the photos of people that, again, look like wackos that are celebrating the fact that they've got sufficient number of signatures to get this measure to the ballot. And if this thing passes, first I think you're going to see some challenges, some legal challenges. But if it actually passes in levies, you're going to see more states try to do the same thing. That's the first thing. Now, you've already got legislation at the federal level that has been proposed by the same old cohort that wants to destroy wealth.
But again, I reiterate, these are the people that have the most means with which to leave.
That's true. And I hope they do. And take themselves, their families, and their fortunes elsewhere. And their businesses. There's been an exodus, you've seen that, of headquarters, businesses, out of the Golden State, fleeing for more business-friendly states. And I think that what needs to be kept in mind is the vast majority of those people, they're not aligned with the wackos here. They think like we do from a free market economic policy perspective, from a purpose of government perspective. And what the left has, to a great extent, succeeded in is convincing people that the purpose of government is just to be a cradle-to-grave provider, which is not at all the case, not according to our Constitution, which seems to have just been set aside for much of this. But it's like I said, it's always the same litany of programs. It's free child care, free health care, free education, free this, free that, free this. And, of course, nothing's free. Everybody knows that has half a brain at least. But somehow utopia would break out. That's what they believe. If all of
because they're historically illiterate.
I think that's right. And this would absolutely not produce the kinds of, in fact, they would be harmful to overall society and the overall economy, but they don't get it. I'll share another example. This just came to light here in the last few days of how markets are the best regulators and best determinants of outcomes, economic outcomes. Some companies are finding that artificial intelligence costs more than people do. Hey, that's fine. Okay, so
especially if you're not using an AI tool that you built in-house.
That's right. And
if you're using someone else's AI, you're having to buy time with their AI.
Exactly right.
And if demand goes up and supply stays the same, then the price of that time for the AI is going to go up.
That's right. But on the other hand, if companies say, you know what, I can actually spend less money on human beings and produce the same or maybe even better output, well, then AI will have to up its game and it'll have to get more cost competitive. It's just simple as that. That's markets at work right there. No government needed to introduce that dynamic into the marketplace. I love it. That's beautiful. So it works for some, doesn't for others. It depends. That's where government's out of their league and should stay out and stay away.
It's like a bigger, faster version of what you saw during, and I'm not saying AI is a bubble. I've kind of gotten over that
I agree.
Thought process. But you think back to the dot-com bubble, and it seemed like every single business under the sun decided we need a website.
Yep.
And half of them were never used.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of people jump on and go, hey, we could use AI. And then they implement it and they go, we didn't think this through.
It's in vogue, right? And everybody is the fear of missing out. And I got to, and a lot of it, you know this, executives sometimes will make these business decisions so they can be around their colleagues or not even their peers, really, and brag about it. Seriously, I've witnessed it. And it's like, yeah, but it's not really producing any benefit, any measurable benefit. And it just doesn't have to be AI. The whole DEI movement was all about that. It was who can one-up the next person, with the consultants they'd hired and the policies they'd implemented, and then go off to these conferences and brag about those programs. It's similar situation. But then reality sets in. Wait, that's not really helping. It's not boosting our bottom line, and we're a for-profit business. I know that shocks a lot of people. The share of Americans who feel worse off financially, lower than at any point in 25 years, although that actually conflicts with today's consumer confidence report that shocked and came in better than expected. I thought we might see that affect the markets in a little more positive fashion, but that has not taken place. I'm watching a report right now. This is pretty cool. Joby Aviation, they are launching air taxi flights into New York City. I can't tell where they're departing from. It looks like maybe across the river there in New Jersey.
Didn't they have that back in the 70s with helicopters?
Yeah, and these are more drone-looking type aircraft.
Because wasn't there a horrible crash with, the wind at the top blowing over the helicopter and it killed a bunch of people, and that's what put the kibosh on that?
I think that's right. Coming right back, final segment.
America's 250th.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I feel free. I feel free. I feel free.
On the C Spire text line, Brian and Madison asks, did y'all mention Ilhan Omar's comment on World War II? Yeah. I'm telling you.
It's been making the rounds for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, the dumbest member of the United States Congress, and maybe the most dishonest member of the United States Congress. But, there's a video that surfaced. I can't remember when the incident actually occurred, but she was reading.
It was in response to Trump enacting the Alien Enemies Act or something like that.
Okay. And she referred to World War XI. Now, it said she very quickly corrected it, but she absolutely did say World War XI. That's pretty interesting. So this company, this is pretty cool, this Joby Aviation that we were talking about, it's an electric drone, essentially. It looks like just a full-size version of a small model type, typical drone with the vertical engine that could pivot, propellers that can swivel, and in a helicopter-like cabin. But it's electric. That's what's kind of neat about it. And let's see, it carries folks, I should say. Actually, this was just a test flight. I don't know where all they're going to deploy it. They're a California-based company. The test flight was from JFK to Manhattan, JFK Airport to Manhattan. Yeah, I got to tell you, I've flown into LaGuardia countless times in my business career and then would take a cab or an Uber to LaGuardia. I'm not exaggerating when I say that there were many cases where it took me longer to go from LaGuardia to Manhattan, 7 miles, than from Atlanta to LaGuardia on a jet. It's crazy. I mean, the congestion of the traffic there. So, yeah.
According to People magazine, it started yesterday and they're demonstrating the new technology with a, quote, week-long display of its air taxis traveling from a popular airport to 3 different hubs in Manhattan.
Okay. Well, there you go. So it's all people doing the same thing I was doing, which is flying to either JFK or LaGuardia and then headed to Manhattan for business.
They carry 4 passengers and can fly up to 140 miles an hour.
That's cool.
And according to NBC News, the FAA could grant approval for the air taxis within the year.
Man, so it's like a few minutes aboard from one of these airports into the central part of Manhattan there. So where do they land there? On top of buildings, or are they building heliports or landing areas for them? I would imagine they would have to be heliports already established. Yeah, I was thinking as well. I mean, so these are vertical takeoff and landing, and again, it's electric.
Yeah, it's between the JFK airport and the downtown Skyport, as well as the West 30th Street and East 34th Street heliports.
Okay, so those are probably currently being used by conventional helicopters, and these guys have evidently cut a deal to use those facilities as well. No, that's great. That's fantastic. I don't know that I could have afforded it, but that would have been pretty convenient in my day because I'd just be sitting in the back of an Uber or a cab just like, oh, my gosh, when are we ever going to get there? Just hour and a half.
You probably could have afforded the old New York Airways that I was talking about in the last segment, the one that ran in the 70s, because it was less than $5 a trip.
Yeah, you're right about that. I would have happily
over
paid that
$50
tariff.
in today's money, but still cheaper than what the current going rate is to get into downtown or midtown with a helicopter.
Happily, what I would have paid that. Michael Lightsey Realtor says World War XI is bad, but Guam capsizing is still worse. So Hammer and Hank Johnson, that may be the best of all time. I don't think he even knows how dumb he appeared in that particular video. If you hadn't seen that, you got to go look it up on YouTube, and that's him where he is questioning in a testimony from some top brass member of the military, and Hammer and Hank expresses his concerns about the additional military installations that are going to be built on one side of the island, that it may cause the island of Guam to capsize because of the weight from this new military. And it's just amazing to me that that officer, a high-ranking officer, of course, a big brass decision maker, was able to keep a straight face through all that with Hammer and Hank asking him that question. We are out of time here today. Back with you again tomorrow in the Element Wealth studio. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.